clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes.
Okay,
So.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Yes.
It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
And Mr. President, I wanted to ask you also about this Ukraine plan.
Yeah.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of
Well,
pretending...
he'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, you know, they should just keep fighting, I guess, you know.
The suggestion that you made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that
Well, at some
accurate?
point, he's going to have to accept something, you know. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. I would have never, this war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago. The ultimate deal would have been if it never started. That would have been the good deal. That could have been done too if you had the right president, but you didn't have the right president.
Mr. President, cost of living is something that you and Mr. Mamdani seem to agree on.
Right.
Democrats have run New York City for a long time, Mr. Mamdani. Do you see Democrat policy specifically as being a problem? And I'd like that to be a question that both of you could answer in New York City.
Look, I think that there are many things in our city where we have to own the responsibility of it, things that existed long before the president was the president. And those are also part of the message of our campaign, was to take on a broken politics of the past. And I ran against a number of candidates who represented different versions of that past. And what we found time and again is that working people were left behind in the politics of our city. And what we're looking to do is put those people right back at the heart of our politics so that we don't have a situation where we're in the wealthiest city in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 5 can't even afford $2.90 for a Metro card.
You know, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost, you know, the new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. You know, it's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were, you know, we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years under the Biden administration. And we've got inflation down now to a normal number. It's going to go even a little bit lower than that. Katie, do you have something in it?
Mr. President, thank you so much. Mr. Mamdani often talks about New York City being covered by international law, that they will follow international law. Doesn't often talk about the U.S. Constitution. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of it could be covered by international law, local law. It's covered by a lot of laws, but it's covered by U.S. law. Are you referring to anything in particular?
He just says that they're a city that endorses and enforces international law. Is that at odds with?
No, I don't know. Would you want to? Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think what I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want. We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters.
Jack?
Mr. President, I want to know, one of the policies as well that Mayor-elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech, you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our
But to be
city.
clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted synagogue.
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted a synagogue in New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you've threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad, and we don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say that, subject to what policies are being set. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, Dave de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President,
Mr. President.
Yeah, okay, how about you? Go ahead, please.
You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting. Absolutely.